caught in the middle, but who would make the best job of looking after the NHS? Good morning, this is the News Hour on GMTV.
Yes, it's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 3rd of March.
On the programme this morning, she's caused a huge political row over the health service. We speak to Margaret Dixon, the pensioner whose operation's been cancelled 7 times.
And what's on your breakfast table this morning, and will you be sharing it with the children? Eating together around the table is becoming a thing of the past for British families. And there are parents who seem happy to feed their children junk food instead of healthy fruit and vegetables. More in 20 minutes' time.
Mind you, I can't ever remember having breakfast together.
Oh, I can. Yes, I can.
In those days, yes, that's right.
No,
you listen to the home service.
Yes,
oh,
exactly.
Goodness,
Right
Mama.
programme.
Could I have some more porridge?
Indeed.
Now, parking tickets and the men and women who issue them.
Can you imagine? Of course not.
We're talking about parking attendants. An undercover reporter joins us to tell us about the dirty tricks of the parking ticket trade.
Yes, first of all, so-called overnight penny, I thought I ought to get in the toaster before I came to work. It's freezing out there.
Pop yourself in the porridge.
Good morning, Andrea. Get on with it.
Daddy's gone mad.
It's not even the end of the week, is it?
No. It's a big toaster.
Yeah.
Morning. We've seen a lot of snow overnight across the south and east, but I think it's actually going to be icy conditions that are going to be causing the problems, not just the snow, because we have seen some very, very cold temperatures overnight. We will continue to see some snow showers feeding in across some eastern parts of the country through today. Things gradually improving before we see another system just moving into the north and west later on. A cold day as well, and after a very windy night, it looks like the winds are going to continue to be strong through today. Penny.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Top story this morning, 1 in 10 of us is a victim of identity fraud. It's one of the fastest growing crimes, and according to a new report by the consumer magazine Which, the internet is making things even easier for criminals, as Denise Gravel reports.
It could just be another harmless spam email, but then again, it could contain viruses which allow a hacker access to information stored on your computer. That's just one of a whole range of high-tech scams used by thieves who steal identities. Once they have sufficient details, they can use them to start ordering goods over the internet, for instance, or to start collecting credit cards. Discarded bank statements and utility bills are another source of valuable information for thieves who steal them from bins. Consumer groups say all post should be ripped up or shredded before it's thrown out. Credit files should be checked regularly. ID fraud already costs the country more than £1 billion a year. Police warn it's on the increase.
Denise Gravel reporting there.
Let's catch up on the rest of the news. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to you. A grandmother whose life-threatening operation has been cancelled 7 times is at the centre of a political storm over the NHS this morning. Our political correspondent, Gloria De Piero, is at Westminster to tell us more. Morning, Gloria. This case giving the Tories plenty of ammunition, then?
Yeah, Michael Howard used the Weekly Clash Prime Minister's Question Times to highlight this case. A 69-year-old woman, Margaret Dixon, from Warrington, up in Cheshire, who'd had a serious shoulder operation cancelled 7 times. This is what she said in a TV interview last night.
If I am helping them to highlight the situation and to get under Tony Blair's skin and prick his conscience a little bit more, but if the Conservatives feel that they have got better ideas and can administer things in a better way, then fine.
Now, Tony Blair said her case was completely unacceptable and pretty rare. Then he went on the offensive and said under a Tory government, people would have to pay for their own NHS treatment.
Let the honourable gentleman stand up and tell us how an old age pensioner living on the pension is going to afford a hip operation.
Now, what did he mean by that? What would the Tories' policy be? Well, under a Tory government, you could now choose to either use the NHS or go private for your health treatment. However, the difference is if you did go private, the Tories would pay up to 50% of that cost. And what critics say is that's using a considerable amount of NHS resources to pay for people's treatment who are well enough to use the private sector already.
Gloria, for the time being, thanks so much indeed. Hundreds of schools remain closed, and there's more traffic chaos this morning after blizzards swept across part of Britain last night. The northeast and southwest of England are the worst hit. The Army is still helping emergency services in Kent. Hospital staff are transported in Army 4x4s. Drivers in the area are being warned to take extra care. There is no link between the MMR vaccine and increased rates of autism, according to new research. A study of 30,000 Japanese children discovered rates of autism continued to rise in the country, even after the triple jab was replaced with single injections 12 years ago. A PR expert has told Michael Jackson's child abuse trial that the singer's close aides plotted a smear campaign against the mother of his 13-year-old accuser. And Gabriel Kite told the court a TV documentary featuring the boy had been a disaster for Jackson, and associates had sought to counter the damage. Jackson's defence then questioned her credibility, saying she'd only worked with the star for a week and had never met or spoken to him. The trial continues today. Steve Fawcett has decided to press on with his non-stop round-the-world record attempt, despite vital fuel loss from his aircraft. He decided not to make an emergency landing in Hawaii and is now at the mercy of strong tailwinds if he's to have any chance of making it back to Kansas and clinching the record. Some locals in Carlisle want to destroy a stone artwork because they believe an evil spell on the monument is jinxing their city. Carlisle in Cumbria has been hit by foot-and-mouth disease, floods, job losses and footballing failure after erecting the stone for the millennium. The council will now discuss whether to destroy the artwork carved with a 1,000-word curse. It's 6:06. I'm back in half an hour. Now it's back to Penny.
Thanks very much, Angela. Now, most of us will have felt hard done by at some point or other after getting a parking ticket. You pop into the shop, a couple of minutes later you return to the car and a ticket has appeared as if from nowhere. Well, tonight a documentary reveals the incredible lengths to which some parking attendants will go in order to issue a ticket.
This man sometimes issues a ticket after the driver's gone. Such a ticket will take 4 weeks to arrive, depriving the driver of his chance of a discount.
So you go. When the drivers run away, drive away, you have to write his registration. And everything you can complete later.
Right. Do you tell them that you've issued them a ticket?
No, why?
You don't?
Joining us now is Steve Wilson, who was one of the team of documentary makers who infiltrated the parking attendants. Good morning to you. So what other sort of things were going on?
Just a general culture, really, of getting as many tickets as possible. Often we saw one guy issued a ticket towards to somebody who'd actually fallen asleep at the wheel of the car, issued a ticket when they were then there, and
that sort of thing.
without moving them on as well on a busy street. So they stayed there, blocking up the traffic as well, rather than moving them on. They gave them a ticket.
They give them a ticket. And is this because of the fact they get commission for doing more tickets, or what?
No, there's not that much really in it for the parking attendants themselves, except I think maybe esteem from colleagues and praise from superiors. There's just, as I say, there's just this culture of going out and issuing as many tickets as possible, and being esteemed by your colleagues because of it. And I think that's why they do it, and the management encourage that, and they want to see as many tickets as possible.
Because we do see quite a lot in the papers, don't we, about, for example, a bus driver once got, getting ticketed recently in an actual bus lane, or whatever. I mean, we do see these ridiculous things. But on the other hand, you have to say parking attendants do a good job. It's a thankless task, but it's they move people on and ticket people who are overstaying their welcome in at parking meters and that sort of thing, for which we should be grateful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That a lot of motorists will, abuse the system if they go unchecked. They will block up the traffic willingly and carelessly, and do so. They'll take up parking all day, and they won't share it with the rest of the public, which is what you want. That's what a parking attendant wants to do summertime, is just free up parking and stuff. So it is a thankless task, and it's got to be done. I mean, if they stop working today,
of course we get snarked. But the problem, of course, is that when you see something like that, you think the motorist. How are you going to prove whether you were or weren't in that spot, or whether you did or didn't commit the offence? I mean, that is the problem for most motorists, to actually try and get recompense if they think they really have been treated unfairly. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the abuses that we did see, the few abuses that we did see, I think often depended on the motorist not fighting their corner and not going for the appeals. I know that if I receive a penalty of something like £50, if I think I'm going to have to write 3 letters to get my money back, I'm not going to bother. And I think that's the complacency is there.
Well, after your experiences, do you think there should be changes made or not? Do you think that in general, actually, things work quite well, or do you think there should be a change?
I think the role of the parking attendant should be more clearly defined. Also, you know, for those people who are doing the job themselves, what the role actually is. I think there's definitely there's a culture there of revenue generation and not necessarily as much free-flowing traffic and freeing up of car parking spaces as some people might claim.
Right, so it needs to be changed round to make sure that it's actually about free-flowing traffic and less about actually getting revenue for the local councils.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Steve Wilson, thank you very much for coming in this morning, and we tried to get a comment from the Department of Transport. A spokesman said it was a local matter. Southwark Council, which is featured in the programme, has told us it'll investigate any claims of unfair treatment, as will the company contracted to carry out parking controls in the area.
Time now is 6:10. You're watching the News Hour here on GMTV. These are the headlines you're waking up to this morning. Hundreds of schools remain closed and there's travel chaos as overnight blizzards cause more problems.
Steve Fawcett's decided to press on with his non-stop round-the-world record attempt despite vital fuel loss from his aircraft.
And locals in Carlisle want to destroy a 14-ton artwork they believe has put a jinx on their city. Now then, the plight of a pensioner whose high-risk operation has been cancelled 7 times at the centre of a political row over the NHS this morning. 69-year-old Margaret Dixon said goodbye to her family each time she thought she was due to undergo surgery after being told she had less than a 50-50 chance of surviving. Her case gave the Tory leader Michael Howard ammunition in the Commons yesterday to challenge the Prime Minister over the state of the health service.
That Mrs. Dixon and the 67,000 patients who've had their operations cancelled represent the real world and the real NHS, and that the Prime Minister is living in an entirely different universe.
Let the honourable gentleman stand up and tell us how an old age pensioner living on the pension is going to afford a hip operation. They've never changed, they never will change, which is why they should never get back in charge of our health service.
Well, joining us now is Shadow Health Secretary Andrew Lansley. Andrew, very good morning to you. I've rarely seen the Prime Minister so angry. Maybe he has a point. This is a very distressing case, but it's an exceptional one, and you're making political capital out of it, he would argue.
Well, actually, the Prime Minister's synthetic anger was about the proposition, which is a false one, that the Conservatives would ask people to pay for operations. We have no such proposals, complete fabrication.
You would ask them to contribute if they decided to go private.
Well, if people go private now, they pay the whole cost. I mean, when Michael Howard was in Manchester about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he met a man called Bob Norburn. And the primary care trust there said that he couldn't have his surgery for prostate cancer, so he had to go to Sunderland, he had to pay for himself. Now, Michael took up that case, and the primary care trust reimbursed Mr. Norburn. But you see, under the NHS, if people aren't looked after by the NHS and they go into the private sector, they get no help at all. But the issue is, should the NHS be there when you need it? That's the point Michael was making yesterday. Well, okay. Here's Mrs. Dixon. She needs the NHS, a badly needed operation, a dangerous operation, cancelled 7 times. She's no criticism of the doctors and nurses. She thinks they're excellent. And that's our experience right across the NHS.
OK, but just to address my first and central point, you are making political capital out of this, and this case is an exception to the rule. You can't deny the fact that the overwhelming majority of people who go to the NHS are well treated by the NHS and are treated, generally speaking, efficiently and speedily.
Well, of course. But the point is that Mrs. Dixon needed us to intervene. She came to Fiona in Warrington, who's her local Conservative councillor, and she came to us in order to try and get the treatment that the NHS wasn't providing for her. Her criticism isn't of the quality of care being provided by doctors and nurses, and that's never been our criticism. Our criticism is that the resources that we provide to the NHS, and there's so many more, are not getting to the front line. You know, why are we paying almost literally twice as much 8 years on after Mr. Blair said he was going to save the NHS in 24 hours, and Mrs. Dixon is waiting 6 months and she's had her operation cancelled? Let me just make... and it's a general point, you know, it would be a question if there were just one isolated instance But last year, 67,000 people had their operations cancelled, and that was 16% more people having their operations cancelled than 5 years previously. So when you just look at that question, are people getting their operations cancelled? Are they getting their treatment when they need it? The answer is it's not happening to the extent that it was happening previously.
OK, but this particular case is a problem because she needs a high dependency bed. Now, are you not appeased in any way by the announcement yesterday that they're going to double the number of high dependency beds at this particular hospital, and they're spending more and more money on high dependency beds to try and resolve the problem?
Well, of course, when Michael Howard raises a problem, then instantly Mrs Dixon gets a date for an operation and they say they're going to invest in new high dependency beds. The question is why, in that hospital, did there used to be 16 critical care beds and now there are 14?
Would it be any different under your regime?
Yes, because more money would get to the front line. Let me give you one example. There are now the primary care trusts. They're the organisations that are supposed to look after local general practitioners and local primary care. They started off as sort of small local bodies. There are now 39,000 administrators in primary care trusts. That's more than the number of GPs. So, of course, the money isn't getting to the frontline services, and doctors and nurses I meet right across the country, I dare say this is true in Warrington, want less bureaucracy, they want less money wasted, they want more money providing the services that they want to give to patients.
OK, Andrew, thanks very much, Dee, for coming in to talk to us. We'll be talking to Margaret Dixon, the lady at the centre of that controversy, at 20 to 7, and also hearing from Andrew's opposite number, the Health Secretary, John Reid, later in the programme, when I'm sure my colleagues will put some of the points you have raised to him.
Time is 16 minutes past 6. It's one of the fastest growing crimes in Britain. Information is the new cash, apparently, and every year identity theft costs its victims more than £1 billion. New figures out this morning claim that 1 in 4 of us has experienced it, and more than 2/3 of us worry about it. But just how easy is it to steal someone's identity? What Denise Gravel has been finding out.
Ordinary household rubbish. But amongst the boxes and the cartons and the old food, there's enough information in here, on this old water bill, for instance, to set a fraudster well on the way to stealing your identity.
Discarded bank statements are even richer pickings for the so-called bin raiders, whose approach may be low-tech, but it's on the increase.
I've actually seen people raiding these bins. They turned up late at night, fished out 5 or 6 good-sized refuse sacks, loaded them into the back of the car, and away they went.
So what happens when a fraudster has your details? Well, for one thing, they can start buying goods over the internet, and for another, they can start collecting plastic.
But it's not that easy. Using somebody else's credit card and a telephone bill, I tried to get a store card at 3 major high street chains. 2 of them turned me down immediately. The other said I'd have to wait at least 2 weeks for a decision.
Police say ID fraud is becoming a major problem and it's relatively low risk for the criminals, but it's costing the country more than £1 billion every year.
Well, joining us now are Lynn Foldswood and Arnie Wolfenden, who was the victim of identity theft. Good morning to you. Arnie, how did you find out that your identity had been stolen in the first place?
Well, the first time that I had contact with anyone, it was purely by chance, actually. I was bumped into my old landlord, who said there's a letter for you, saying that there's a telegram. So I phoned the company, and the people on the other end said, Miss Wolfenden, you've got a Capital One card that's in the excess of £3,000 that you owe. And I said, well, actually, I've never actually applied for a Capital One card. I've never had a Capital One card. And that was how I led into dealing with that one.
Right, and then you discovered that there were other cards that had been taken out.
Yes, yeah.
After that. How did you find out that?
I was advised to do a credit report through Experian or Equifax, the 2 major credit reference checks in the UK, which I hadn't thought of, but I had that check done, and when I received the documentation, there was several different cases also that had been used in my name.
So how much did you allegedly owe?
It was in the region of £15,000.
£15,000. And how did you deal with that? How did you actually go about unpicking all this?
It's a very long process, and I'm still actually in the process of dealing with 3 of the companies. I have to say that Experian were very good and have helped me process and take a lot of that responsibility out of my hands. But initially it was just very stressful and completely overwhelming, upsetting. I was very angry, and it was a matter of having to prove that all of these
cards
expenses
were not yours.
that
Were
were
not
in my name.
even though they were actually in your name. Lynn, this is incredible, and I hadn't realised how common this is as well.
It's incredibly common. Arnie's a nurse and moved home, and that's when the problem happened. And a lot of people, when they move home, they don't realise that the mail might still, for a year later, be going back to their old home and being intercepted. And a lot of these credit card offers come through. You just bin them, and you don't realise that people can actually turn them into a credit card and skim off your money. 1 in 4 of us has either been a victim. John, they tried to open some accounts in your name,
Trying
didn't they,
to tap
a couple of
into 2
years
of our
ago?
accounts, yeah.
Yeah, and the first we knew was when Experian contacted us, which is one of the companies you mentioned. I don't think people realise that they can check if there's anything like that.
So are you saying that, for example, I mean, I chuck everything, all this sort of junk mail that's addressed to me, I just chuck it straight in the bin from today. No, in all seriousness, so that's the one thing I don't shred. I shred everything else, all my accounts and all the rest of it. I shred, but that's the one thing I don't.
Anything with your name and address on it, shred it, because they can also take your utility bills and they can use it. They can contact the company and say, actually, I've moved house. Can you now send it to whatever? And with a 3-monthly bill, it might be 3 months before you catch up that they've actually moved your house, intercepted your bill, and used that to get credit somewhere else.
Now, you've got 3 key tips.
Key tips, yeah. Never, ever give out your details. I'm getting this every week. I get told I've won money and give me the details and they'll send me the money. They're trying all sorts of ways to get your money out of you. So never give the details on the web or the phone.
They do it on the internet as well, because I keep on getting something from the Halifax saying you need to
It may not be the
details.
Halifax. That's the trouble.
No, of course it's not the
people
Halifax.
pretending exactly to be banks and building societies and using their authentic website, copying it. So it's very difficult to spot them. Just never, ever give it out. The next one is, we've got quite a few chip and PIN numbers, some of us. I've consolidated all mine onto one easy-to-remember number, and don't make it the year of your birth, the date of birth. Make it a number that you can remember and nobody else could guess. And then the last one, a shredder. Now, we shred most things, and I think I'm going to shred everything from now on. But you don't have to buy a shredder. Just use a pair of scissors and make sure you've cut everything up finely.
The amount of junk mail, I'd get blisters. Thank you very much. And so everything is getting sorted out. Everything is slowly getting sorted out, Arnie.
It is, yes.
Well, fingers crossed, it'll be all right. But thank you very much for coming in. Thanks to Lynn. And you can find more tips on protecting your identity and who to contact if you think someone's using your cards on our website. That's gm.tv.
Tell you what, Penny, I laughed at Lynn when she said she was buying a shredder. I said she's getting paranoid, and it was the very next week we got the first of these incidents where someone was trying to tap into our accounts, and thanks to that agency that tipped us off about it. Otherwise, we could have been as badly off as you were. Well done. Hope it's resolved. Still to come on the news hour, why we are what we eat, as they say. So why do we continue to feed our children so much junk food?
James Bond is here.
Captain. Set and a vodka.
Dry vodka martini. Vodka martini. Shaken, not stirred.
Never vodka.
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
All the Bonds in one place, continuing with The World Is Not Enough, Friday, 8:30.
At a bus depot, somewhere in Birmingham.
You ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
6 coach drivers are facing the challenge of a lifetime. They have just 3 weeks to become lords of Irish dance.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
But can even a world Irish dance champion...
I don't think it can be done in 3 weeks.
...lick them into shape?
Get out here and do it again. I'm scary myself.
For one night only.
It is beyond my control.
They'll be dancing in the depot. Saturday at 9, ITV1.
Time is 23 minutes past 6. Welcome back to the news hour here on GMTV. Now, what have your children had to eat over the last 24 hours? If the findings of a new survey are correct, chips, and more chips, but little or no fish, fruit or vegetables. In a moment, I'll be talking to Dr. Amanda Kirby from the Discovery Centre in Cardiff, who carried out that survey. But first, Matt Arnold joins us from Helmshire in Lancashire with a family who, well, let's find out what they eat. Good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning to you, John. Well, yes, it is actually the case for this family that I'm about to visit in their lounge at the moment. It is a bit of chips, chips and more chips. Here's a typical meal. It's a little chicken burger and chips. Did you know that the Lunchbox survey has revealed that 50% of kids over the last 24 hours in the country have had either chips or fried food, and they haven't had any vegetables or salad. And also, 86% of them haven't had any fish at all. Well, I prepared a little unhealthy plate of snacks here. We've got pizza, crisps and sausage rolls. So let's go through to the lounge and meet the Bullen family. They're on the settee, and I think, Mum Jackie, if we can talk to you first. Okay. It's a fair cop that we've got you on the settee because you do spend some time eating in here as a family, don't you?
A little, yeah.
What about the healthiness of the diet? Because, let's be honest, I found you yesterday in a shopping centre near Manchester, and the reason I picked on you because you had two of your kids, you had Josh and young Sam here, and they were just eating pizza and chips. So what about this healthy nation and the diet that your kids are having here?
Well, we do try to be healthy, but they prefer pizzas and chips and things like that. So we try to balance the diet and let them have some of the things they like.
OK, well, let's talk to Jessica here. Now, we've got some examples of some healthy food on the table. We've got some nice celery and some carrots with some dips, and apparently it's going to be better for you if you try it with some dips. Do you just dislike vegetables totally?
No, I don't like them. I don't like the texture.
Is it just the texture, or is it, do you like chips and burgers more?
I just like chips and burgers more.
All right, well, let's bring Dad Andy into it. I mean, you're a fair cop to come out and do this for us, but you do spend a lot of time eating on the settee, and a lot of families don't even have a dining table in the home. How many times do you reckon you eat on the settee per week?
Probably 3 times a week, yeah.
Yeah?
Let's be honest, 4 times.
4 times a week. So what about, I mean, does it worry you about the diet of the kids here?
No, I think we have quite a varied diet. I'd say it was 50-50.
But you'd like them to have to try things more like this. Well, shall we put it to the test?
Yeah.
Shall we actually put it to the test and let the kids try some of this? I mean, I know that, Jessica, you absolutely hate these things, don't you? So, be honest, with a bit of a dip, is that any better? We've got a bit of a screwed-up face there. What about you, Sam? You try one for me as well. I mean, this is what... I mean, how would you get them to do it if you weren't doing it on plates of crudités like this?
Well, to be honest, my mum gets them to eat vegetables by making lovely soups and blending it all up so they don't really see the vegetables and they can't... feel them because it's just a nice soup, so because it's all blended they manage to eat them that way.
OK, well that's a good tip. Well, we'll try eating some more of this. We've got some more foods to show you as well, but for the moment, back to you, John.
Thanks very much indeed, Matt. Let's go to Dr Amanda Kirby from the Discovery Centre in Cardiff. They carried out this survey, this lunchbox survey as it's being called. That family, the Bullen family, I hope you could hear what they were saying. I guess typical of those who took part in your survey, Amanda.
Well, certainly about a quarter of the children that we surveyed were sat alone over the last 24 hours. When they're eating their evening meal, they didn't have it with the rest of the family. And over 60% of them had actually sat watching television while they were eating their food. And I think that's quite alarming because in a way that children actually sitting watching television, there's quite a lot of evidence they're likely to eat higher fatty foods. And 50% of kids who are obese are watching television at the same time as eating. I don't think you're conscious of what you're eating when you're sitting watching the television. We need to sit round the table and make it a social occasion, I think.
Well, that's the thing I find surprising. We've all seen surveys before, with all due respect, indicating that people aren't eating as much vegetables and as much fruit as they should do. What I've not seen before is the fact that so many people don't have a table. Some kids don't even know how to use a knife and fork because they spend the time sitting on the couch eating food with their fingers.
Well, I think it is alarming because I think what we're doing is changing the whole social structure. You sit at the table and it becomes a social occasion. You use a knife and fork, you sit and attend, you turn take, you learn about social rules as well. You know, Mum says pass the ketchup, but when you go to Granny's you have to wait to be asked if you want extras or seconds. You learn about jokes, you learn about using a knife and fork is a precursor for using a pen and paper when you go to school. These are actually very important skills, and I think we're losing some of those skills because we're not sitting around and concentrating also on the food that we're eating.
Well, let's talk about the food, because you say they eat chips and chips, but not too often they don't eat the fish. Why is fish so important? What does it contain that's so helpful to us?
Well, fish contains omega-3 fatty acids, and about 20% of the brain is made up of these fatty acids. It's important for good brain function, and the best way of getting them is through external dietary sources, and fish is one of the main sources of getting them, and oily fish at that. And 86% of the kids that we saw in the survey hadn't eaten fish at all. In some cases, it was up to 95%. And when you looked at the fish they'd eaten, it tended to be things like fish fingers. And I'm not sure how much fish is in a fish finger, but there isn't oily fish in there at all. And very few of those kids had tuna, mackerel, sardines, the sort of fish, you know, I used to have sardines on toast for tea. I don't think any of them had anything like that.
I love sardines on toast for tea, I can tell that. But just briefly, Amanda, the big problem is, of course, the kids, you just heard them, they don't find that this sort of food, particularly vegetables, attractive. How do mums like Mrs. Bullen make it more attractive?
Well, I think, you know, we saw those kids dipping into the carrots, into the dip and everything. Popcorn instead of crisps, potato wedges instead of chips in the oven. We need to move over and also say that good adult food, smaller portions of adult food, we don't actually have to have children's food. You go to places like Italy and Spain, they have smaller portions of the adult food. And I think it's about introducing those flavours and tastes early on and allowing these children to gradually get used to the food. They don't need to, and if they sit at the table, they're more likely to see what they're eating and concentrate on it and have it as a social occasion.
Okay. Well, we're going to throw those ideas to the Bullen family a little bit later in the programme. But, Amanda, thanks very much indeed for your contribution, and thanks to the Bullens up in the north.
Time is 6:30. Still to come, we'll be finding out if there's a curse on Carlisle.
But first, some weather from Andrea. Rotten weather today, I'll tell you.
GMTV weather, sponsored by Tops Tiles, brightening homes, whatever the weather.
Good morning. The weather is fairly rotten today. It looks like winter is still got a hold on us. It has still got a hold on us. We do have problems this morning, widespread problems with ice, but also continuation of some heavy snowfall in the northeast of England. That's how we'll start off taking a look this morning. The snow is continuing to feed in on these easterly to northeasterly winds. And of course, temperatures have plummeted overnight. So we've got icy conditions there as well. As we move our way further south and east, now yesterday during the rush hour and overnight last night, we saw a lot of snow falling just across this southeastern slice of the country. The snow's continuing to filter in at the moment. It has eased off though, but some areas have seen around half a foot of snow, so it's not something to be taken lightly. And as ever, cold temperatures mean a problem with ice. So these are the areas that we're seeing problems with snow. Northeast England down towards East Anglia into Kent. Also some snow filtering into across the Pennines into some northern areas of Wales. Cold temperatures overnight leading to a hard frost in places, icy stretches in others. But what it does mean is that away from the snow, it's not a bad start to the day. It will look very nice as you're heading out the door. It will feel very cold, but it will look very nice. And into the afternoon, I think it will be an improving picture. The snow starting to ease back a bit. Still filtering in places again across the far north and east of England. One or two snow flurries still continuing across the far south and east, but generally not a bad day expected. And temperature-wise, it will be cold. Now, what we will see through the second half of today is another system starting to push in. We'll see sleet and snow on its leading edge as it comes up against the cold temperatures. As I mentioned, it will be chilly today and very breezy as well. We saw a windy night overnight in the southeast. That's led to drifting snow in some places, and it will continue to be very windy through today. So as we go into Friday, not a fantastic day, I have to say. That system that's moving across us during the latter half of today will push its way very quickly southwards, bringing with it a mixture of rain, sleet and snow in places. But a brighter afternoon for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. One or two snow flurries expected across the far north. And then I'm sorry to say it's another unsettled weekend on the cards. Sorry, hazy weekend. See what's coming up this weekend on our website, gm.tv. Window frames last night.
So rattling, I thought it was a man invading the house. I wondered whether I would have the courage to go downstairs and confront him. Fortunately, I found out in time it was just rattling window frames.
Exactly.
But it was cold as well.
Good morning, it's 6:32 on Thursday, the 3rd of March.
You're watching the News Hour here on GMTV. In the next half hour, we'll be talking live to the pensioner at the centre of the latest row over the NHS. That's Margaret Dixon, who has quite a tale to tell.
And the curse of the stone are the people of Carlisle, the victims of a 16th century curse engraved on a granite slab. They say it's caused them 5 years of bad luck.
But our top story this morning, hundreds of schools remain closed and there's more traffic chaos after blizzards swept across parts of Britain last night. The northeast and southeast of England are the worst hit. Rachel Harrison is near Tonbridge in Kent for us this morning. Good morning, Rachel. What's the situation down there?
Yes, good morning, John. Well, I can tell you that the Army are on standby today because the snow and the conditions have been so bad. In fact, it's the worst snow the southeast have had in more than a decade. In some areas have been affected by up to 20 centimetres, but it's not just here, it's right across the whole of the east coast of England, right up from Northumberland down to Newcastle, the north-east coast of Scotland, going through Lincolnshire and East Anglia. And in fact, it's the coastal areas that really have taken the full brunt of the blizzard-style conditions. In Medway area alone, hundreds of schools have been closed, and we understand hospital workers are even having problems getting into work this morning, which will have difficulties obviously later today. And this does mean that there are troubles on the roads, in particular if you're travelling in Northumberland on the A1 between Newcastle and Berwick. That's actually down to one lane, and that's a similar picture all over the place. Many of the motorways, particularly here in Kent, are very slow going this morning, and I'm afraid there's more bad weather to come. We're expecting up to 5 centimetres of snow today alone, perhaps not quite so much in some areas, but certainly between 3 and 5 centimetres. Then this afternoon it'll ease off, it'll become a little warmer, but it's the freezing conditions tonight that will cause problems for your journey in this morning or tomorrow morning. And I can tell you, if you think this is pretty, I'm standing actually on solid ice this morning, which shows how cold it is, which means the roads are extremely treacherous.
And are those two-tone jeans, Rachel, or are they wet?
They're two-tone jeans.
And there I was just thinking she'd been getting all soggy.
I must confess, I thought I had exactly the same thought as I saw them. The price you pay for being so trendy, Rachel. Let's catch up on the rest of the news.
Thanks very much, John. Good morning. 1 in 10 of us is a victim of identity fraud, according to a shocking new report. The consumer magazine Which says new technology and the internet are making it easier for thieves to steal personal information. ID theft costs the country more than £1 billion each year. The plight of a pensioner whose high-risk operation has been cancelled 7 times is at the centre of a political row over the NHS this morning. 69-year-old Margaret Dixon said goodbye to her family each time she was due to undergo surgery after being told she had a less than 50-50 chance of surviving. In a heated Commons exchange, Tory leader Michael Howard said it showed the desperate state of the health service. Tony Blair said her case was the exception to the rule. There is no link between the MMR vaccine and an increased rates of autism, according to new research. A study of 30,000 Japanese children discovered rates of autism continued to rise in the country, even after the triple jab was replaced with single injections 12 years ago. A PR expert has told Michael Jackson's child abuse trial that the singer's close aides plotted a smear campaign against the mother of his 13-year-old accuser. Anne Gabriel Kite told the court a TV documentary featuring the boy had been a disaster for Jackson, and associates had sought to counter the damage. Jackson's defence then questioned her credibility, saying she'd only worked for the star for a week and had never met or spoken to him. The trial continues today. The very latest in luxury living will be on show when the 97th annual Ideal Homes exhibition opens its doors to the public this morning. Amanda Sargent had a sneak preview.
Nearly 500,000 of us will come here and spend a staggering £300 million on everything from sleek kitchens, fab bathrooms, opulent bedrooms and much, much more.
Now, what do you think about this? It's the very latest in underground cave living.
But it's not just the big things in life. How about the loo, which has everything?
If you hate vacuum cleaning, how about getting something else to do it for you?
And those gadgets you never knew you needed.
Andy's got crayon and ink on his shirt. Very careless, Andy. What are you going to do about it?
I'm going to use this gadget and just soak some water into it, just normal water, and use this gadget to get rid of the stains.
Magic stain remover.
Plus, there's plenty of those essentials such as cushions, sofas, rugs, even chandeliers. The exhibition runs at London's Earl's Court until March the 28th.
It's 6:37. That's it from me. Now here's what's happening where you are.
Good morning and welcome to the breakfast news from ITV Granada. Police in Greater Manchester, hunting for a dangerous prisoner who spent the night on the run, believe it's likely he's still in the region. 21-year-old Neil Brennan from Cheetham Hill was serving 6 years for armed robbery at the privately run Forest Bank prison in Salford. He escaped yesterday while being transported back from hospital in a taxi. The 2 prison officers he was with were held at gunpoint. Police say the attack was well planned and Brennan should not be approached.
He was sentenced to 6 years for robbery. The people that got him away from this taxi were armed, so we must assume that he's dangerous. And the public must be warned not to try and approach him, not to try and detain him if they see him, if they know him, but to contact us, and we'll do that.
The family of a Liverpool man murdered in Thailand say they're struggling to cope with the shock news of his death. The body of 52-year-old Bernard Lacourt was found in bushes near a tourist resort 40 miles south of Bangkok. A taxi driver's been arrested. Bernard went out to work in Thailand 6 years ago with his twin brother, who may still not know of his death.
They picked Thailand. I suppose they had a good life and this has happened. It could be a one-off, but I wouldn't chance going over there to live. But that was their choice. They enjoyed it. But now it's all crumbling.
Two young Manchester United footballers are due to be sentenced today after being convicted of a high-speed road chase in which 2 people were hurt. 20-year-old Mads Tim and 19-year-old Callum Flanagan were found guilty of dangerous driving close to the club's Carrington training ground last year. A woman driver was injured and another of their United teammates needed hospital treatment. The maximum sentence is 2 years in prison. The High Court will today be asked to review the punishment given to a doctor who falsely accused the husband of Sally Clark of murdering his 2 sons. In August, the General Medical Council found Professor David Southall guilty of serious professional misconduct for accusing Stephen Clark after watching a television documentary about the case. He was banned from working in child protection for 3 years. That's the news. Time now for a look at the weather.
Brighten someone's day with a card and gift from Clinton's.
Many of you will be waking up to a chilly day with snow. Later, it'll be cloudy with hazy sunshine. It'll feel cold today with temperatures at 5 Celsius, that's 41 degrees Fahrenheit at best. That's it. I'm back at 7:05. Bye-bye for now.
Time is 20 to 7. The date of the election hasn't even been revealed, but there's no doubt the war is well and truly underway. The plight of pensioner Margaret Dixon, who's had an operation cancelled 7 times by the NHS, provoked the most extraordinary row during Prime Minister's question time.
That Mrs Dixon and the 67,000 patients who've had their operations cancelled represent the real world and the real NHS, and that the Prime Minister is living in an entirely different universe.
Let the honourable gentleman stand up and tell us how an old-age pensioner living on the pension is going to afford a hip operation. They've never changed, they never will change, which is why they should never get back in charge of our health service.
Tony Blair and Michael Howard metaphorically trading blows in the House of Commons yesterday. Well, joining us now from her home just outside Warrington is the pensioner at the centre of that row, Margaret Dixon. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, you've got a broken shoulder, and because of osteoporosis, I understand it's a complicated procedure to rebuild it, which is part of the problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's actually arthritis affecting the bone so badly that they can't do what they usually do with a radial fracture, and I have to have a replacement shoulder because the radial nerve has been damaged as well. But I also have other complications, which means that I have to have a high dependency bed as soon as the operation has taken place, and this has been the problem all along. There hasn't been a bed available.
Right, this is because you've also got kidney, heart and lung problems, as I understand it. So
I have, yes.
How close have you actually got to having an operation?
By being starved from 9 o'clock the previous night to being told that I was going to be got ready first thing in the morning, and then 10 o'clock coming and going in the morning and being told, sorry, the HDU bed isn't available.
And particularly for you, it's an awful time. It's terrible having to sort of getting that close to having an operation anyway. But each time you were expecting the operation, you had to say goodbye to your family because you've been told that you've got a less than a 50-50 chance of surviving, haven't you?
Indeed. In fact, when they came to visit me the night before, each time, we were saying cheerio, not knowing whether it was going to be a see you tomorrow or the last goodbye.
Which must be taking an incredible toll on you emotionally.
It is indeed, yes, very much so.
And what about physically? What's happened since you had the accident?
Nothing apart from having had x-rays and a scan to confirm the degree of the damage to the bone and the shoulder, and waiting for this high dependency bed to become available for me.
And in that time, as I understand it, your hand has virtually turned into being a bit of a claw. Is that right?
It is, yes, as you can possibly see now. That's the hand as it is.
And that's it. So do you blame the government?
Yes, I do. I know that they have been funding the NHS, and I know they are doing things for the NHS, but I blame mainly the government policy of central government allotting the hospitals the money that they can have for the particular financial year, and then telling the hospital where they must spend it, rather than allotting the money to the hospital and allowing the management, consultants and other relevant medical staff to decide for themselves, since they themselves are at the cutting edge and know where the urgency is in the hospital.
Well, I do know that you do have good news, though, finally, about your operation, don't you?
Yes, I heard yesterday that I have a pre-op assessment on the 17th of March, and hopefully I'm going to be taken in on the 21st. Well, at least it's a definite maybe, which is very pleasing.
Which is as much as you can say. Well, Margaret Dixon, thank you very much for talking to us, and fingers crossed that will go ahead as soon as it possibly can. Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. And the Health Secretary, John Reid, will be here a little bit later on in the programme. Send us your views on the NHS or questions for Mr Reid by email or text 81189.
Time now is 7:15. This is the front page of the Daily Mail this morning. This story getting massive coverage in most of the popular papers anyway. Is this the end of the school uniform, is their headline there. Victory for Muslims who want to preserve their identity and its values. That's how Shabina Begum described the Court of Appeal decision to allow her to wear her sort of head-to-toe Islamic dress to school.
Today's decision is a victory for all Muslims who wish to preserve their identity and values despite prejudice and bigotry. The decision by Denby High School to prevent my adherence to my religion cannot unfortunately be viewed as merely a local decision taken in isolation. Rather, it was a consequence of an atmosphere that has been created in Western societies post 9/11.
Well, joined now by Nabila Farhat from the Assembly for the Protection of the Hijab and Terry Sanderson of the National Secular Society. Very good morning to you both. If I could kick off with you, Nabila. Do you see this as the end of the school uniform? And also, if this is going to be allowed, where does this stop? Are we going to have people now wearing face masks as well?
Face masks, as the correct term is niqab. And no, I don't think this is the end of school uniform. I think it's I think this just shows that we need to make some maybe individual cases and allow schools to have dialogue with Muslim parents about uniform policy. And I think where some individual small amendments need to be made to uniform, I think this could be practically made. I don't think it's a big issue.
A victory for freedom, Terry, letting people do what they want to do, particularly bearing in mind their religious convictions.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it will have the reverse effect. I think that this has been brought by religious activists who want to impose their agenda on other people. And what's going to happen is that other Muslim girls who don't want to wear this full flowing garment will be intimidated into doing it by the more pious sisters who are pushing this agenda.
It's true, is it not, that this particular form of dress is favoured only by a minority of people of that faith?
Well, I'm wearing one at the moment. It's just an overdress. It's nothing very new or innovative. The hijab has been around for 1,400 years. This is not a new dress code that's suddenly going to change and we're going to get new forms of hijab. The hijab has been in place for a long time, so we shouldn't really be surprised at this dress code. Muslims have been around the UK for a long, long time now.
And if that's exactly, and if that's part of people's faith and it makes them feel comfortable, why not?
Well, I wonder whether this school is a place for this kind of battle. I mean, I think schools should be secular spaces where everybody can be equal.
Well, they're not. We don't live in a secular
No, we
society.
don't. That's true, but that's what I would like to see. And I think that we need school uniforms so that people can feel equal. They don't have a hierarchy of I'm more pious than you are. We need to get all that kind of stuff out of schools and make them into places where kids can go to be academic, not religious.
Let me ask this, Nabila. Is this really what this girl wants, or is this what some political extreme organisation wants? Because listening to her there and looking at this quote, let me give you this quote from this girl, and reading from a prepared statement, our belief in our faith is the one thing that makes sense of a world gone mad, a world where Muslim women from Uzbekistan to Turkey are feeling the brunt of policies guided by Western governments. I don't know many 16-year-olds who think like that.
Let's just take this out of this political context. The hijab is not a political issue. It is not a political issue for us, and it never ever will be. It has been turned into a political issue by other people, by politicians, as such in the case in France and other. Yes, it has, because Islam at the moment has become a political issue. This is a way of life for us. We are not coming into the political domain because of our headscarves. It has become a political issue, but for us it's a way of life. It's a natural expression.
It's as simple as that.
There is a political Islam at work here, and the people who are behind this case are not ordinary Muslims. And most Muslim girls who I've spoken to over the last few days in interviews like this have said quite clearly that they do not want to wear this kind of dress, but it's going to be imposed on them by fiat in this kind of way and by intimidation.
I mean, I'm very surprised that anybody would be offended by something like what I'm wearing now. I mean, quite honestly, does my dress code affect anybody else's freedom? It doesn't.
Let me put to you the point someone made to me this morning. They said this, and they're liberal-thinking people. They said, look, if these people feel so strongly about this, why don't they go and live in a country where this kind of thing is allowed and accepted?
Why should they have to go and live in a country where it's allowed and accepted? If people have been born here, if they have moved here, if they've been born here generation after generation, Muslims have been in this country for a long time. Why should we? Where do you want us to move?
Why shouldn't we respect other religions? Why shouldn't we respect
theirs? I don't hold that view. I think that there is a place for everybody in this country. Nobody's going to try and interfere with your right to practice your religion or dress as you want to. But school is
free or not?
Yes, we are. You're here now wearing it.
Exactly.
But school is a different place.
You?
School is different. We have to have uniform policies at school, because if we don't have uniform policies, we get into all kinds of hierarchies, and that's not good for kids at school. You shouldn't have, kids coming to school in tatty clothes or
no, but this is a different issue. This is about
yes, it is, but it's
about respecting people's
It's about equality
views.
And people feeling that they belong and that they aren't being looked down on by anybody else because they're not dressed appropriately.
I would say to any parent that is worried about this issue, please do have a look at our website, the prohijab.net website. We have an awful lot of information about what is hijab, what constitutes hijab, and we need to have that flexibility of dialogue amongst Muslim parents and head teachers, and allow schools to make those individual decisions on an individual basis. It's a practical issue we can be resolved.
There, I'm afraid we have to leave it. Thank you both very much for your views.
Okay. Thank you.
9 minutes to 7 now. Could a 16th century curse bring misery to a town 400 years after it was invoked? Fire, floods, pestilence, even a famine of sorts are being blamed on the curse, which has been inscribed on a slab of granite. Louise Port has the background to the Curse of Carlisle.
Could this 14-ton piece of stone, inscribed with a curse imposed on local bandits by the Archbishop of Glasgow in 1525, be responsible for the severity of the foot-and-mouth outbreak in Cumbria, January's freak floods, the worst to hit Carlisle for more than a century, and even the local team's relegation from the Football League? The boulder's actually a £10,000 artwork, which is displayed in the local museum, commissioned as part of the city's Millennium celebrations. The curse is over 1,000 words long and wishes ill will on Carlisle in the form of floods and famine. Some locals now believe it's responsible for Carlisle's bad luck and want it removed.
Well, joining us now from Carlisle is Councillor Jim Tootle. Good morning to you. Are you really taking this seriously?
Well, many residents in the city are taking it seriously, yes.
Could a carved stone be at the heart of Carlisle's bad luck, do you think?
It's not the stone itself, it's the actual curse. The curse is a 16th century curse placed on the people of the West Marches by the Catholic Archbishop of Glasgow. And a lot of people believe that bringing the stone back and carving the inscription on it with the curse has brought the curse back into the city.
Then why did the Archbishop curse them in the first place?
Well, he found that this area was the most lawless in the world. His castle just north of Carlisle actually burned to the ground in the 1500s, and Well, I suppose they had several problems with the border reivers at the time.
Right, and then the reivers, what were the reivers? They were the people who sheep rustling, is that cattle rustling or whatever?
Well, yeah, the people in the area, obviously the border was fluid at the time between England and Scotland. Nobody could really protect the people, so they protected themselves. And to make a living, they had to, well, break the law now and again.
Right, so what options do you have for getting rid of this curse?
Well, personally, I'd like to see the stone removed from the city, but it has been mentioned by various Christian groups that possibly if the current Archbishop of Glasgow came down to the city and performed a ceremony or a service to get rid of the curse, that would be enough. Hopefully that would be enough.
Yes, and if not, where would you move it to?
Well, that's a good question. Who would want it? I don't really know. I mean, the stone itself is a great piece of art. It's well worth seeing, but unfortunately it's the curse that's the problem.
Right, and you've got lots of local support for something to be done.
Yes, well, we'll find out on Tuesday just how the support is when we go to the council chamber with it.
OK, well, Jim Tootle, thank you very much. We shall be keeping in touch with this story. Thank you very much.
We will indeed. That's just about it. Sorry?
No, that was it. That's where I'd finished.
I'll say that was it. From the two of us, Kate and Ben here next with GMTV today. Brian Connolly's with them. He's talking about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He's in there.
Caractacus pot.
That's him.
Next, the weather with Andrea.
Welcome everyone to Headingley Pensioners Speed Dating Lunch. My name's Norma Patterson. Oi, my face is up here.
She's a lady looking out for love, with no shortage of admirers.
And although I'm a little on the short side, women tell me I'm rather blessed.
But her idea of Mr. Right...
Girls, this is Eddie.
...may be wrong for someone else.
I need to tell you something, Norma. What?
Kay Mellor's Fat Friends, tonight at 9, ITV1.
One's a Hollywood superstar, one's a British singing star, one has the hots for Jenny.
You are stunningly beautiful.
The other is committed to his mum. But the one thing they have in common, they both have the X Factor. Steve Brookstein and Will Smith, tomorrow on Entertainment Today.
GMTV Weather, sponsored by Tops Tiles. Brightening homes, whatever the weather.
Good morning. These are live pictures of Tunbridge Wells in Kent, or just outside Tunbridge Wells in Kent. Now, Kent has seen a fair amount of snow over the past 24 hours. Rush hour yesterday was particularly horrendous, and I'm sorry to say that this morning we will be seeing problems not only with that snow that you saw there, but also with ice as well. And for the next couple of days, it looks like winter is still going to keep a hold. Now, it's not only the southeast that's going to be seeing problems. We've also got problems in the northeast of England as well. Let's take a look at that first thing this morning. Here you can see we're going to see a continuation of some fairly heavy snow through this morning. Some areas expected to see up to 15 centimetres of snow. That's 6 inches. Add on to that a cold night overnight, so icy stretches on rather slushy roads, so it is going to be a little bit slippy. And it's a similar story too for parts of East Anglia and, as you saw there, areas in Kent as well. So taking a look at the UK as a whole, we've also got some snow filtering into parts of North Wales, and some Trans-Pennine routes could see 1 or 2 problems. Elsewhere, a heavy frost, and that does also mean some icy conditions on untreated roads in other parts of the UK. So basically, if you are travelling anywhere this morning, leave a little bit of extra time because conditions could be a bit tricky. Now, it will look very nice as you're heading out if you do live away from where we're seeing this snow across much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, many central and western areas and into the southwest, starting off dry and bright. And most of these areas, I think, will continue to see some good sunny spells this afternoon. And even where we're seeing the snow across parts of the northeast, they should ease back. And similar story too for parts of East Anglia and Kent, although we will continue to see 1 or 2 snow showers through this afternoon. In the latter half of this afternoon, we'll see another system pushing in. That will bring some sleet and also snow just ahead of it as it pushes up against the colder air that we've got in the British Isles. But generally speaking, it's going to be rain across Northern Ireland, northwestern Scotland. And temperature-wise, another cold, cold day expected. A windy day too for the south and east. Here's a summary. Check out what the weather will be like this weekend on our website, gm.tv.
Food, glorious food, but why are we serving up junk to our children? It's approaching 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 3rd of March.
Good morning to you. This is GMTV Today.
So, what are your children having for breakfast this morning? The reason we ask is because a worrying new survey has revealed that the nation's youngsters aren't getting the nutrition that they need. Many have no breakfast at all, and some even have fizzy drinks before they go to school.
I know, it's frightening, isn't it? And actually some adults do that as well.
Absolutely.
I've been known to, and it's not good. I know that. We've got details on that and the genuine problems it causes children and adults as they become adults later in their lives. We want to hear your views, though. What do you think about children's eating habits? Are they any worse than we used to be? You know, we always say kids are terrible, aren't they? Eat too many sweets, too many chips. Who didn't?
Who didn't? I think we all have. But some of us still do. But we should perhaps be better. We're going to be finding out why. Text us 81189 or email us gm.tv. Something else that I think is going to get you wanting to text and phone us in. You may love to hate them, but do parking attendants really use dirty tricks to catch out motorists? I don't think there's many people out there that haven't been suspicious of a parking ticket that you've had in the past. But we're going to be finding out from one reporter who went undercover to work with those parking attendants to find out just exactly what goes on.
That's going to be so interesting. And also on the showbiz front, he's a Corrie Street star, but not for long. Tommy Harris, actor Tom Craig, joins us to tell us about his dramatic exit. Oh dear. But first of all, this morning, blizzards have swept across much of the east of Britain overnight, causing traffic chaos and resulting in the closure of hundreds of schools. There'll be some youngsters who've got time for breakfast this morning. The Army is on standby in case of emergency. Rachel Harrison is near Tunbridge in Kent. Good to